Welcome to Dad Hammer, Bolters and Booze, where we discuss all things Warhammer while staying hydrated with an adult beverage. I am David the Warboss, and I am joined, as always, by the most generic Space Marine in the Imperium, Mr. Medicae Steve. Steve, how are we doing tonight?
We are back, buddy.
Fierce.
Super. Yes, very excited. It's kind of weird. Been a little too long.
Yeah, a little break, little vacation, a little PTO.
Yep.
I mean, that's warranted. We work hard, and I mean the podcast is fun. I don't consider it work. We both work hard at our respective jobs. Took a little vacation, and I mean I got to tell you, man, I missed doing this and talking Warhammer, and thankfully there's just a ton, always every single week of good stuff to talk about our favorite hobby. So yeah, man, I'm pumped. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah.
Back in the studio, as it were. It makes it sound more official.
That's right.
Right, got it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight or today, this morning, whenever you're listening. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a great show here. We have the Battle of Oghram results. Those are in, and that means that the Tyranids won. Tyranids consumed. Space Marines lost. And whether that's legit or not doesn't matter. The Battle of Oghram is over. The Tyranids won, which means new models. Very exciting. We're also going to talk about the latest feature coming to White Dwarf, which is called the Bunker or Bunker Club. Really cool new feature that you'll want to hear about if you're interested in starting up your own league or having a framework around that. There is some news around Epic 40K, or as they're calling it now, Legions Imperialis. Really awesome there. Age of Sigmar, Cities of Sigmar revealed, and all the new models, a couple of one that I really have my eye on, and then we'll end it with several new Warhammer board games that have been shown off. So packed show today, really exciting stuff. Thank you so much for listening to our show. If you like what you're hearing, make sure to rate, follow, subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. And of course, you can also find us on our website, dadhammerpodcast.com, and on all social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, where we have pictures of our latest projects and comment on all the latest activity in the Warhammer community. But first, we're going to start with the most important part of every Dad Hammer podcast, and that is, what are we drinking? Steve, I'll let you go first because my drink is a doozy tonight. So I'll let you hit us up. What do you got tonight?
I wish it was anything near as cool as what we're about to talk about, but I'm just drinking some Angel's Envy bourbon. It was aged in port wine barrels, so it's a little fancy pants, but it's smooth. It's a nice drinker, but man, let's just hit it. Go.
I feel like we didn't give any spotlight for you, right?
Nah, it's okay because this needs its own. This needs its own podcast.
That's fair. I'm gonna bogart the mic a little bit tonight. I've got a pretty fancy drink, and this one is I don't know. It's probably seasonal, but what's the best season for a cocktail? And the correct answer is right now. That's the
Right
best
now.
season. So this is what is officially called a spiced stout flip, and I have put a little bit of an orky name to it, and it's got quite the ingredients. But I'm going to call this one the Boomdakka Stoutwagon, and I think that maybe it's just the visual of an orc driving an insane car full of Guinness straight into your mouth. I mean, that's what this is. So the ingredients on this one: 3 ounces of stout beer, okay, 2 ounces spiced rum, fine, 0.75 ounces simple syrup, or a little more if you want it sweet, and then the kicker is 1 whole egg. You just drop it in there. So here's the thing. You take all those ingredients and you do a dry shake. So no ice. You get that to emulsify, mix up the egg with the stout and all of that. And I know it may sound a little gross, but I promise you, totally worth it. You dry shake the ingredients and then you add ice and then you shake that. So to chill it up. And then if you want, you can garnish it with a little nutmeg on top. Yes, that sounds a little more festive, but Christmas in July. But you know what? Krumpin is always festive. It's always in season. And boy, I think the best way I can describe this, if you've never had one, is if you like Guinness, you like a stout beer, creamy, stout beer. The egg just adds a little creamier texture to it. It's really
All
good.
right.
Really, really
I'm
good.
down with
Highly
that.
recommend it.
Could this count as like a post workout drink? Because
Uh,
it's got some protein, right?
right. You're gonna drink one of
Uh,
these right after you lift weights. Is that what you're thinking?
well, I mean, if we're gonna go for it,
Mm-hmm.
let's.
Oh,
No,
I
I'm
went
not doing
for it.
that.
So here's the other positive is that it only uses 3 ounces of Guinness. So
Okay,
um,
okay.
I got a I
You
got
can
a
make another
full
one.
I got a full can of Guinness right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna finish up this drink and then chase it with Guinness, which is always a solid move. I'm gonna feel real good.
Have we done a podcast yet and not mentioned the Boomdakka?
I don't know. It's my favorite.
I mean,
Boomdakka
it just
Snazwagon. This is a stout
that's it.
wagon though.
I love it. I love it. It's perfect.
Well, I'm gonna continue drinking because this is great. I hope you enjoy your really boring drink. But all things considered, cheers and bottoms up, Steve.
Cheers, man.
All right, let's get into it. We got a lot to talk about. Let's first hit up the Battle of Oghram. And if you are not familiar, that was the whole lead in with the Leviathan box, the launch of 10th edition. The Battle of Oghram was the setting for Space Marines and Tyranids to fight over the planet and to see who's going to take control. Really cool video. If you haven't seen it, go out check that out on YouTube or on the Warcom
Hmm.
site. Just really gets you into the setting and all of that. But the results, what they did is they offered up for anyone that got the box, the Leviathan box. It came with a little code on the inside, and you take that code, you go to the website, you put that in, and then you choose which army you're supposed to play the game between Space Marines and Tyranids, and then you
Yeah.
choose who won. So you fill that in, and it's just a way for them to invite the community into determining who's going to win this battle. And at the end, what their promise was is that whatever faction, whatever army wins, they're going to show off new models, all new range for that army. Um, so thankfully, I mean, for me anyway, I voted for Tyranids even though I didn't play an army with the Tyranid model because I was still trying to put
Yeah.
them together. But Tyranids won, and there are all kinds of new models that came out, and boy, did they deliver! I think
They knocked it out of the park.
it really did. And Steve, we'll start with the first one. Well, I say the first one. I don't remember the exact order, but the one I've got here in front of me is definitely the most impressive, and that is the Norn Emissary, or of course you can alternate as the Assimilator, I believe.
That's right. Yep. I think it's bound to be a two in one kit, probably.
Yeah, and this thing is massive. It's huge. I mean, it's as big
Yeah.
as a knight.
That's just gonna be so cool.
I,
I can't wait.
yeah, I'm looking at this thing, and the one thing I'm not a knight player, but
Right.
I am a sucker for large, huge models on the table. Just really
Hmm.
gigantic beasts and beings and all kinds of stuff. And I think it's really cool that the Tyranids are getting this huge monster. I just trying to visualize this thing on the battlefield, especially in if there would be to have an animation around it. Just this giant behemoth thing marching towards you. So, Steve, your opinion on this? I mean, have you looked at either the Norn version, the Norn emissary, or this simulator? If you're going to get one of these things, which version would you go? Which variant?
I'm kind of man. I dig the assimilator. I think it's just so gnarly looking, and lethal looking. The emissary looks good too. So I actually read in the codex. If you look in the back
Mm-hmm.
toward the end of the codex, there's a whole lore section about what's going on around this, and there's a whole story that involves these two figures. And that whatever breed of Tyranid you want to
Mm-hmm.
call it. Um, really interesting stuff, man. So they really flesh it out, and they're actually, the model looks cool, but just what they are as far as tying into the rest of the Hive fleet, very very interesting stuff. Um, really makes you want to play one too, because I'm sure their data card is going to be out of this world.
Yeah, I
I would
think
imagine.
too. What I just looking at the models, I think the Norn emissary variant really looks more like a Godzilla type
Yeah.
character, and then the assimilator, I would say, looks it's still Godzilla esque, but it almost looks
Hmm.
more of a an insect variant versus the first one gave me more of a lizard reptile vibe, and the second
Right.
one gave me more of an insect vibe. So honestly, I'm looking at either one of these. Both of these are amazing looking. Of course, the paint jobs are next level, but
Yeah,
still,
that's a different story.
yeah, but still looks incredible, and I'm just really excited to see more gigantic models going up against other gigantic models on the board. Just looks really really cool.
And I don't think their current range had a lot. They had some big models, but nothing of this size,
Mm-mm.
unless you went to the Forge World stuff, and then you know how that
Yeah,
gets.
you're
That
paying
gets a little.
$9,000.
Yeah, and they're notoriously not the easiest things to
Yep.
put together and
Yep.
paint and etc. So this is a win for
Yep.
sure.
Really cool. I definitely will be picking up one, but I'm concerned that everyone else is going to be trying to pick up one. So who knows how
Yeah,
expensive this thing's going to be either. I
that's
would
true.
assume maybe $150, $200.
Yeah, I'm thinking Silent Kingish
Yeah.
price,
Yeah.
or maybe a Satan model price
Mm-hmm.
range,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. That's what I'm just guessing.
Yeah, we'll see. But of course, I've got
Hmm.
an entire Tyranid army doubled up from the Leviathan box, completely
That's
unpainted.
right.
So I gotta take care of that first. Well, there's additional models here. They showed off
Hmm.
the Biovore and Pyovore, and those are some of these names are hard for me to remember everything. So I just look
Yeah,
at this and I say, well, that's a spider crab with a giant cannon on its back. That's what it looks like to me,
that's right.
and it looks really really cool.
Is this replacing a current, or is this a whole new unit?
I think it's a whole new unit.
Okay,
I'll
okay,
have to go check out their website, but I want to
yeah.
say this is a brand new one. I mean, there were some additional models that whenever they do these kinds of things and they give a glow up, to the some of the older models that have been out there. But I want to say that this one is a brand new.
Oh, it
Um,
is. I see it.
yeah, so the
Yeah, because
Biovore and Pyovore, I would assume fire for the Pyrovore. That's my guess anyway.
yeah, it's like some sort of melting acid assimilating. Like it pre-digests everything
It
for
looks
the.
gross. I mean the cannon the cannon on the back, it just looks disgusting, and
Yeah.
but in all the best ways.
Yeah.
I think they've really captured, and Games Workshop does a great job of this on all these armies, but they've done a great job of capturing the essence of what this thing is, which is a spider crab, with armor and everything on it, and looks terrifying on its
Hmm.
own. And then they've added this weird mutation. I've seen this with Chaos. I've seen this with Death Guard. They take something that is normally fairly fearsome. It's like, oh man, this is an
Hmm.
imposing figure, and then they add this weird mutant gun kind of thing to it, and it just makes it look even more terrifying into the nightmare realm.
Well, and it's even if you really go down the rabbit hole, like the barbagants that are in the Leviathan box, the guns, and even the termagants, the guns themselves are a separate organism.
Yeah,
So it's like this
gross.
weird symbiote.
Gross.
Yeah, man. It's just, gosh, it's just creepy and just like, man, it's just so cool though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I've never really wanted to play Death Guard because that's to me that's getting into the realm of gross, and I'm not really sure I want to paint that and play and read about it. Um,
Fair enough.
the Tyranids are gross, but more in the creepy gross.
Mm-hmm.
They're like aliens gross versus Death Guard is like zombies gross.
Yeah, there's a smell involved with Death
Oh
Guard that,
no.
yeah, I
Well,
just
I I guess you're closer to that. Being in the medical field, I guess you're a little.
I've smelled that smell and I don't like it.
Oh, all right. Let's move on quickly. I am drinking my drink still, so let's keep it going. Um,
I agree.
so the next one up is the Lictor and Neuro Lictor, and these come off of the. They look like the Von Ryan's Leapers, so I
Mm-hmm.
think
Mm-hmm.
that is where this is coming from. More just and I don't know enough about the army to really say one thing or the other, but everything just looks like tons of hooks and arms and insect-like appendages, and this
Tentacles.
is just another model with all of that plus an
Yeah.
exposed brain and just absolutely
Gotta love it.
insane.
Yeah, I love I used to read a bunch of like HP Lovecraft, Cthulhu kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
100%.
And this is straight out of that kind of, I don't know, they're nightmarish and hellish and you're like, where did this come from? This can't be an organism, but they're organisms. And I think it's still kind of interesting that no one, they haven't really told the story of where the Tyranids come from,
Mhm.
but you keep finding these new, just when you thought it was just as bad as it gets worse before it gets worse.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. And I like this. They have an image up on the Warcom site where they show this the I guess it's the Neurolictor where it is
mhm.
tearing into which looks to be some boarding actions terrain, and like it is coming into an Arcs
Yeah.
of Omen vessel and just ripping
Yep.
through the doors. I just have this image in my head of this multi-armed snake insect looking thing just coming in and tearing through the doorways. And if there's one thing that Warhammer does really really well, it just sets that setting and visual, combining the lore and the models and the
Hmm.
look of them and everything involved. And so I'm all in, man. I love this so much.
Yeah, it's great. I'm really glad that they're putting some emphasis on this.
Absolutely.
Uh,
So they've got three other units that they showed off. Gene Stealers, Termagant Switch, and
hmm.
Hormagant Switch are coming from the Leviathan box. So not really anything new per se, but the Termagants and the Hormagants are multi-pose. So the ones that you got in the
Hmm.
Leviathan box were monopose, but push fit, which I loved. It made it a whole lot easier. No super glue required, but
Hmm.
the Termagants and Hormagants now are separate boxes, which are great, especially for folks that already have those. And then the Gene Stealers are new. And, for me personally, the Gene Stealer models aren't really doing it for me.
Well,
They look more like they give me a vibe of a little bit of an Incredible Hulk almost, like the faces that they make gives me this
yeah,
Incredible Hulk thing with some spider limbs and whatnot. I don't know. That's just not doing it for me.
I have a box of the old Gene Stealer kit. I just bought them because I was going to use them in Kill Team, to make a separate Kill Team out of them.
Right.
Uh, those look real derpy compared to these.
Yeah.
So these do look better. They are an improvement. I think in game they're pretty good though.
Yeah.
So
They
especially
don't
you
look
can
bad.
no,
They're just not really for me, I think.
yeah, they're weird. They got a different vibe for
Weird.
sure.
That's probably the best way
Yeah.
to describe them. They're a little weird. Um, I don't plan on running these personally,
Mm-hmm.
but who knows? They also look fairly easy to paint though. A lot of the pale skin, depending on the color scheme that you choose.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that.
anyway,
Which is always a good
overall,
thing.
yeah, overall, really cool model range. I'm glad the Tyranids won the Battle of Oghram. Whether or not that was legit or not, or Games Workshop had something to do with that, doesn't really matter. It was cool to see. I like the new model range. Excited to see more. And then, of course, with the Codex coming out in the near future, we'll get to see some additional, um, you know, uh, the what are they called? The battle regiments, not the battle regiments. What are those things called?
Detachment rules.
Detachments. Thank you. So we'll
Yeah,
see. We'll
yeah.
get to see more detachments, where the Tyranids would be able to be placed into those with some additional rules. So very exciting stuff, really cool,
Yeah.
and looking forward to running them on the table. Let's move on now to the next topic, which is something you and I are both really excited about. Maybe not as much as other people, or a little more than other people, perhaps. But the new Bunker Club that has sounds like Bunko, like for old people,
Bunko.
but
Old Bunko Club.
but this was shown off recently and flew under the radar, I think, for some people. But for you and I, both subscribers to White Dwarf magazine, I'm always on the lookout for more features added.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is, man, right up our street. Um, this for those who are not a White Dwarf subscriber, I highly recommend it. Really cool magazine if you're into the Warhammer community. But this White Dwarf Bunker is essentially a giant worldwide gaming club, or something to build structure around
Yeah.
everybody playing and be able to track stats and win loss and things like that, and really gives, I think, in summary, gives a structure to, if you wanted to build your own league, if you had a group of players together that are playing a lot of games, and you don't necessarily have the how do I weave a narrative in? How do I know what scenarios to run? How do I make sure it's balanced? From what I'm reading, Steve, this
Mm-hmm.
this bunker club gives you some of that structure, gives you something that you can just plug and play for your games, while also building in a ton of scenarios. So I don't know about you, but I am really, really excited about this.
Well, I mean, we talked about it with our small group of friends. We were trying to figure out kind of how to do that anyway. Talking about making a big uh, uh, a solar map and trying to figure out where everyone is and all that stuff. Just
Yeah,
some
campaign.
sort of yeah, campaign kind of situation. And just making some sort of structure so that, all right, well, you and I may not be able to play, but say me and one of our other friends play, and we'll have a like a bracket, and you can kind of structure things. You're like, all right, well, here's where we're going to go from here. And it's like trying to do that, those mission packs. You buy those quarterly books that they were coming out with, like last
Mm-hmm.
edition and stuff, but this kind of organizes it for you. And like you said, it has the missions and challenges and little flavor things that you don't have to put the all that effort into doing. It's going to have some lore stuff. It looks like sort of similar to the Flashpoint articles they have.
Yeah, but
Um,
the really cool part too is that it's going to come with scenarios, but I think from
hmm
from what I'm reading, those scenarios that they're giving won't just be random scenarios. I do like the Flashpoint stuff that they add in White Dwarf, because they'll have a couple of articles to give you the story and setting, and then the
Right.
Flashpoint will have the map and the game and some other rules that are associated with that setting. It sounds like to me though that they're going to try to weave all of that through multiple issues through this bunker club, and give you all of those scenarios and rotate the types of games and what you can do with those. And then supposedly, from what I'm seeing, that you're going to be able to track and score. I I haven't seen anything where they're going to allow you to upload. It would be
hmm
really neat if they added something to Warhammer Plus, or maybe on the website, where you could upload the results of your games and be able to track all that stuff. But it looks like to me, just from these screenshots, that you're going to be pulling out the magazine, potentially making a copy of that page, and then writing down the results of it. But Steve, I'm also looking at one of these pages where at the towards the bottom, it's got these bunkered challenges and ranks, which looks like little cards.
Yes.
And to
hmm
me, that, just from what I've seen from past issues of White Dwarf, that would be perfect for them to have like a perforated
Yep.
insert within the magazine and have those pop out cards.
And I think if I watched a YouTube video, and I can't remember who it was, but I think they were showcasing this issue. Um, and there's going to be the quick start guides, like we've printed off, like we've talked about, that are so important to play in this edition.
Yeah.
The little cheat sheets, but it's going to be on the nice card stock that they do the tear outs in. I think this is good too, because I've talked to Mark at Blackthorn here in town, they used to hold competitive 40K stuff at one time, a couple of editions ago. But he said it becomes overly competitive, and it turns off a lot of your clientele.
Mm-hmm.
People don't want to show up to do a tournament because there's a lot of preparation. There's a lot of things that go into that. Most people want to show up there. It's your friendly local gaming store to do a friendly local game with people you haven't met, but you're going to make new friends, right?
Right.
This is a great way for a small game shop that doesn't have the infrastructure or network, or maybe even a customer base that's big enough to hold tournaments and stuff, but they want to have a Saturday afternoon game or a Sunday afternoon game, but you want some structure and you don't want to put a lot of work into it. You don't want to put it all on one person that's also a customer to come in and use their free time to organize it. It's kind of pre-organized for you. Or do you understand it the same way?
Yeah,
Or are you kind of getting that feeling out of it?
I think so, and I think too this gives you the easy button, or at
Mm-hmm.
least relatively easy. It has the structure for you, so that you don't have to have someone being the lack of better term game master or dungeon master, where they're
Right.
having to plan all the scenarios, because the biggest challenge with that is trying to make sure that things are balanced, that
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to insert a new scenario or a new rule, is that going to modify the game so much? And part of me wants to just say, well, let's just have fun. Don't worry
Right.
about if it's going to knock the game out of balance. So just put in a random rule, but even still, that requires some extra thought. And for you and I, especially in the dad hammer world, uh, there's already a lot to remember. There's already a lot of
There.
rules
Yes.
and things to keep track of. I don't need one more thing. But in this scenario, I think that if we're going to be playing and we're going to need something to track, I don't want to have to create the system. And this looks like that they've already created the system for us. So now when we
Yep.
play, we can just go and fill in the blanks. And I'm all about filling in the blanks. It's much easier to modify something that already exists versus creating something net new.
And the brilliant part of what they're doing here is not limited to 40K. They're doing it with AoS.
Yep.
I'm reading it's going to be a rotating support for their skirmish games, Warcry, Underworlds, Kill Team. And it says this one's going to have 3 battle plans for Warcry. I mean, that's just
I,
really awesome.
I think it's great that they really, I think finally, are starting to understand that people already love the game. They already love
Yes.
the game, the models, all of that. White Dwarf can be an avenue to give them, to give readers, to give the community additional, I guess I want to say sanctioned, but official, creative, vetted scenarios and rules and cool stuff and flavor text and awesome artwork and pictures to add to your game to really just enhance. And that's, I think that White Dwarf has done a really good job, at least for me, of taking the hobby and the game that I already enjoy and enhancing it. It's not a necessity. You don't have to have the subscription. There's nothing that is in White Dwarf that you just absolutely have
Mm-hmm.
to have. But if you're already an avid player or you're somebody who's curious and you just like to look at pretty pictures of models, and to me, as someone who's also a Dungeons and Dragons player, it gives me additional narrative and scenarios and think, oh, I hadn't thought about putting that terrain in that
Yeah,
particular,
that's right.
way against this other army. And it just gives me more ammo, things to think about when I walk into a game.
Well, and another plug for it too is all right. Say you do get a subscription. All right, $90 for the year. So add that up, you get a whole year's worth of. I mean, I think honestly, for the average player, there a year's worth of White Dwarf stuff with these scenarios and stuff you'll never get through.
Yeah.
However, in the past, in ninth, if you wanted this kind of structure, you're buying books that are anywhere from 30 to probably $45 a piece. Yeah, if you're talking about those mission packs, those what GT uh, chapter approved mission packs that came out,
Right.
I think those were $30 books. Just take like the boarding action books, what those are like $40, $45. So you're talking 2 books but you have a year subscription. And not only, it just feels like they're validating that this is just going to be not so much publication heavy. There's going to be a lot wider range of support for all their products. Um, and that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm getting out of it. And not just support, but it's going to be support that you're not spending an arm and a leg for,
Yeah, I
um,
agree, and
to get
it,
it.
it feels almost like it the way that the magazine's structured too. It they're short bursts. The articles
Hmm.
are contained. There's not a ton of reading. 3 or 4 pages per section, and it's almost like this pamphlet. Like if I was walking by a store and a Warhammer store, and they had like, hey, try out this scenario, and they gave me a
Yeah.
3 or 4
Yeah.
page little printout booklet. White Dwarf feels like a combination of walking by the store about 20 different times and getting multiple pamphlets for all the different games. And, there's just still something, even in today's age with the digital, there is something still to be said for getting that magazine in the mail. And yes, we're plugging the
Yes.
mess out of White Dwarf right now,
A
but
little bit, but
it's great. I love getting the magazine, something to flip through. The artwork's great. The models are painted to the nines, of course. And now they're adding all these different scenarios. And on top of that, another feature that they're adding to this bunker is a training section, which is going to be provided, at least in the initial stages, by Stephen Box from Vanguard Tactics, which
yes.
I personally have a huge amount of respect for, because not only does he know the
Hmm.
game really well, but he's a wonderful guy and really is trying to promote positive mental health throughout the game of
Yes.
Warhammer and the community. So to have someone like that coming in here to say, hey, here's how you can improve your tactics a little bit. Here's how you can improve your game some. And just looking at the tactics that they're putting here for this, what they're calling basic training, I love little insights, and this is something that you and I have been talking about for a while. That we would
Oh,
love
absolutely.
a video version of this too in Warhammer Plus, but I'll take the White Dwarf print
Hmm.
version if that's what it
Well,
means to get it.
and I spent my whole life fishing as sort of a pastime too. I enjoy that. I still enjoy that. So I used to get a lot of magazines in that realm, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I love about White Dwarf? No advertising.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't open a publication anymore. Again, plugging the deal, but you can't really open a publication anymore, and every third or fourth page is a some sort of ad for something else. So when you get this magazine, I mean, it is chock full from cover to cover, but it's all
Content.
Warhammer,
Yeah,
all content,
all of its
and
content.
that makes it just feels better reading that magazine and adding this basic training. I mean, that's going to be so awesome. I mean, I'm just looking at the pictures and I can't, my old eyes, I can't really zoom in that good right now, but I'm assuming, like, all right, if you have this scenario, this is what you do. That's what it sounds like. It's going
Yeah.
to kind of, and I think it's awesome.
Yeah, general tactics. And it's funny you mentioned the lack of ads in the magazine. The one thing I started to think about though is thinking back to my old gaming magazines or the old comic books with the
Uh
Hostess
huh.
fruit pies ads and the comics.
Exactly.
Those were the best. So
Yeah, well, that's true.
if they ever add advertising to White Dwarf, I would love some really
Snacks.
cheesy, yeah, snacks ad for like Doritos, but you got Gazgul or something talking about, what I want, some cheesy tortilla chips. I would love some kind of stupid ads like that. I know it'll never happen, but man, that would throw me back to the old days when we would have
I
those really
could.
terrible ads in the comic books. Oh man. Well, safe to say, you and I should never be on any kind of marketing team whatsoever.
Nope.
Nope, or
Not if you want to
advertising.
keep the company.
That's correct. Well, excited about the White Dwarf bunker and all the features that are coming, and man, I'm excited to see this, and we're going to be definitely rolling into some new scenarios and leagues as soon as we get down to reading all of the issues for sure.
Exactly.
let's flip over now to one of the new games that was announced. There's been a lot of previews over the last couple of weeks, and one of those is Legions Imperialis, or I think a lot of folks in the community call this Epic 40K. It's what it used to be called back in the day.
Right.
So Legions Imperialis, for those that are not aware, Epic 40K was essentially a micro version of the 40K universe. So instead of having whatever the standard range of models are, you take that
Like.
and then you shrink it down even more, and now you're able
Hmm.
to field an entire army and force within a smaller grid. So it's like Honey I Shrunk the Kids
Yeah.
for 40K. Um, but they announced this coming back. I love the small scale. The only thing that gets to me, and this is something that we you and I can talk about here. I'm just curious, why is this around Horus Heresy? Why not take Epic 40K, which was announced as a new game, really exciting, really cool, all good.
Hmm.
Why is this going into Horus Heresy? Do you think it's because they just there's too much 40K fatigue right now? Everything's 40K, 40K, and they don't want to double down on that?
I think, um, in my opinion, and this is coming from having perused the rule book for the Horus Heresy game. Um, and I've read several of the Horus Heresy novels. Okay, there is the scale of the conflict and the scale of the battles was so immense in the lore.
Mm-hmm.
Because now, technically there's only supposed to be a smaller number of Space Marines per
Right.
chapter,
Right.
etc. But the legions were immense, and the heresy, we were talking wiping out hundreds of thousands of Space Marines at a time, because the only thing that can kill a Space Marine is another Space Marine, at
Mm-hmm.
least at the time of 30K. So I think they're really just doubling down on the lore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And let's be honest, it's easier to get Imperial factions sort of. I think you could make those models. I think you could sort of make everything look a little better. And like you said, there's what, 24 factions or something like that in
Mm-hmm.
40K right now. Is that
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
uh, I could see how that would get sort of fatiguing, and then if you wanted to add something else. So I feel like they're trying to come back to that sort of roots of things, because there may be a lot of people that don't. I mean, what the Horse Heresy was, and all that stuff, but it's always been Primarch centric, right? So there's never a lot of stuff out there as to how immense the scale of the battles and how immense the scale of destruction and how much was lost,
Yeah.
how much the Imperium lost in that whole
Maybe so.
experience.
I like the point of, because and just thinking of the business side, if they were to try to do this in 40K with all the different armies,
Hmm.
you're talking about all those molds and
Yeah.
just the cost of doing that. So, that's a really good point. Maybe they knew that there was an audience for this epic small scale type of a system, and if they wanted to tackle it into 40K, it was going to be extremely expensive. So maybe this is a way to come out and say, hey, we hear you. Here's the
Hmm.
micro version of the game that you love, and you want to play even a larger scale. I say scale in more of the narrative sense. Um,
Right.
you want to play a larger battle without having to field, I guess 1,000 different models, and now you can
Oh
have
man.
that within the system, and you do it more as a precursor to the 40K universe. I think that's really actually a really good point, very smart.
Hmm.
Um, for me, I'm not into the Horus Heresy universe as much personally. This is just personally. I know a lot of people are excited about this for Epic 40K Legion Imperialis. Uh, I personally would have preferred, if you're going to go on a small scale, I would have preferred them to resurrect the Battlefleet Gothic game with the ships. The more of the fleet,
Hmm.
almost like the Star Wars Armada game, where you're commanding the fleet of ships and looking at the arc, tying into the arcs of Omen and all that kind of stuff. I would have preferred that. if I'm going to play on a small scale, I would prefer it to be tying into 40K. But I can definitely see your point where this is tapping into a different audience, but it's also a little more manageable, maybe for Games Workshop as a business.
Yeah, and my Magic 8 Ball says that Battlefleet Gothic's coming back. I kind of have that
I
feeling.
hope so.
Now, I will say I am a little disappointed in this new epic. I really think that they could have kept at least the orcs and the Eldar, only because those were the heresy stuff came after the Great Crusade.
Mm-hmm.
They fought those Xenos and stuff during the Great Crusade. So I think just like completely dumpstering all the Xenos factions that there were, like in Aeronautica Imperialis, which is going to be able to tie into this.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they kind of may have isolated some people that would be into this, because I think it'd be pretty cool. You can get away with the heresy stuff and look like we're doing some great crusade stuff. We're going to fight an epic scale battle against orcs, because that would be an epic battle. I mean, that was like planet covering.
Well, I mean, they can
In
always
some,
add it. They can add it later. I mean,
yeah,
that's
that's true. That's
classic
true.
Games Workshop is, here's the game. If people start buying it, they really like this new game and the
Hmm.
structure and the models and everything. They'll just come out with more factions. They'll just treat it like DLC essentially.
Right.
Uh, but
Exactly.
but the DLC will turn into like $500 of
Whew,
worth of
you
models,
know it.
most likely just going on the Games Workshop formula. But anyway, looking at the models here and the pictures, they look great. Of course, they're this Games Workshop model, so they're always going to look great. Um, I'm for me, I'm curious about this. Not necessarily a day one purchase for me. I'm curious.
Hmm.
The good news maybe is that because the models are so small, you can play a very large game without taking up a ton of room as far
I
as
think that's
storage is concerned.
Yeah, I feel like that's part of the appeal too,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
the good news for Games Workshop is they've definitely diversified their gaming footprint, and they can appeal to a lot of different ranges and people that are looking for a different type of game. And I think this Legion Imperialis. It's hard for me to say that
It
name.
is.
Epic 40K. It
Yeah.
seems to me that Epic 40K is going to fit that bill very nicely. All right, let's move on then to some Age of Sigmar news. They had a big reveal. This is during their quote unquote not 40K event.
Yeah, that's right.
And we talked about this last time. I love the little banner that had the cancel out symbol, like the no smoking sign for no Primaris lieutenants allowed. That was great.
That's right.
But they showed off a lot of Age of Sigmar stuff. But the thing that I keyed on the most, and I'm an Age of Sigmar player. I have a Skaven army. That's
Hmm.
really the only one I have. I love the game itself. The rules are great. And we've talked about this before. I prefer the 40K lore and the aesthetic. However, looking at the Age of Sigmar Cities of Sigmar, that's what they keyed on in primarily, showing off the full model range. Personally, I applaud I guess the notion of bringing multiple races and cultures together as a unified
Yeah.
army. That whole concept is cool. Not something that I kind of like to do the same army, the same culture, the same race, if you will, in the fantasy or the 40K world. That's the type of army that I like to run. But models look great, look really awesome. The one thing I wanted to spend the most time on, however, this incredible model, Talia Vedra,
Oh
Lioness
yeah.
of the, is it Parch? I'm not sure how to say that, but essentially it is a single model riding on top of a manticore. And if you don't know what a manticore is, it's a lion plus an eagle's wings, bird wings, and then a
With a
scorpion's
scorpion
tail.
tail. Hmm.
Unbelievable. Like
I know, it's just crazy.
one of the things I love about Age of Sigmar that I wish 40K would do as well. And they're starting to do this. Of course, we saw this with the Tyranid race, with the Norn, the gigantic models there, the Norn emissary and the assimilator. But
Mm-hmm.
looking at this Manticore, what I love about Sigmar is that they really go into the large beasts, just the huge hulking behemoth type
Mm-hmm.
models, and I love the aesthetic of it. I love the fact that Age of Sigmar has kind of differentiated itself. Right? It's really leaned into the fantasy aspect of it reminds me a little bit of Lord of the Rings, when they come in with the elephants
Right.
and they have all these crazy
Yes.
contraptions on the back of them. They do this with Oryx. They do this with Cities of Sigmar. And I really like the fact that even with Cities of Sigmar, which can seem a little plain Jane, just a bunch of troops and, the quote unquote good guys, now they've got this
Mm-hmm.
giant beast and they've been able to harness it and throw a big, like, apparatus on the back. And now you're riding it into battle. I love the fact that they're doing this. To me, the model looks great. Steve, I know that you're still working on your Slaves of Darkness army,
Yeah, that's right.
but what were your initial thoughts with the Cities of Sigmar range?
I thought it was the models were cool. I just didn't know how they fit in to everything. But as I've been sort of researching it a little bit, it's going to be neat because if you were to do a Stormcast army, it looks as if you can add these cities of Sigmar models in as
Yeah.
allies or whatever. Um, I I like the Harbinger of Decay. I don't
Hmm.
know where that falls into all this because it all got released at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has anything to do with the cities of Sigmar or if it's just another sort of semi faction or splinter faction or whatever you want to call it. But the models look really cool. I love the dudes with the two pistols. They look
Yeah.
like cannons, but there's pistols. I mean,
And
there's
the one of the big appeals to me of the Cities of Sigmar, for at least someone who's looking for this, is the versatility. If
yes,
you're not going to get bored with
that's
Cities of
right.
Sigmar. You have so many options, and coming as a 40K player, a lot of times if you pick an army, it's just, especially like with Necrons, or for example, or Orcs, you're going to have the same type of model over and over again.
Hmm.
And personally, I like that. It feels like a unified force. But if you're someone that gets bored easily, and if you don't like the same thing over and over again, Cities of Sigmar really, really gives you that aesthetic.
I mean, you have cavalry, you have some ranged weapons. Um, I don't know what this little wagon with the globe and have you seen that model?
Yeah, crazy stuff, man. I mean,
It's just wacky,
but
but I love it.
that's part of it, though. You
Yeah.
you have all of these different people and tribes with their own way of waging war coming to. It's almost like they're doing this call to arms. This
Yes.
unified
Exactly.
call to arms. Whoever is going to join and fight against the next force. And I was going to say evil, but of course there is no good and evil in these games.
Mm,
But it definitely
right.
feels like that the Cities of Sigmar are the quote unquote good guys. Stormcast Eternals would be in the same realm, but this is call to arms to bring in whatever you got, whatever you're good at. Let's
Hmm.
come together and fight the opposing force. So really cool release. I'm excited for, especially anybody that is looking forward to Cities of Sigmar. They definitely needed a re-release. I saw that there are some the Duarden added, which of course are the dwarves. Still,
Yes.
still a little bummed that there's no dedicated dwarf army. Otherwise, I would totally be. Well, I take that back. There are the Fire Slayers, but I
Yeah.
talked about that too. It's like they're just a bunch of naked dwarves. I need more than that. I need siege weapons. I need monsters. I need a bunch of stuff for me to jump in. But either way, really cool force. Excited for Age of Sigmar players, and especially those that are looking at the
Definitely.
the Cities of Sigmar line.
Agree. I like it. It's just going to be really neat, and I look forward to getting a little more into the Age of Sigmar stuff. And this just makes me a lot more excited because it's just going to be a little bit more open.
Yeah, agreed. Looking forward to some games in the near future. Well, let's hit one final topic, and that is the release or the announcement, rather, from the Warcom site of a range of Warhammer themed board games. And I use the word board game in a little bit of an air quotes because I think most people associate board games with Monopoly, checkers,
Hmm.
shoots and ladders, something very, very simple. And I think that what they've done with the latest board game releases here, they're going after the right crowd. They're releasing these smaller games that are able to be completed fairly relatively quickly. They're releasing them in Target stores so that if you're going up and down the board game aisle looking for something, ironically quick and easy to spend with the family, and you see
Hmm.
Warhammer, little do you know what you're getting into.
Yeah,
But but
it's a
still,
trap.
it's definitely a trap, and but a good trap. Um,
Hmm.
I think this is great. This is not necessarily for me. I'm definitely not the target audience. But I remember talking to you about this, saying, do you care about any of these board games? And you mentioned the Space Marine board game. You're looking at that, thinking, hey, that's actually a pretty good value to up your model count.
Yeah, it's a board game based on a video game based on a board game.
Oh,
That's
jeez.
the funny that's the meme material, right?
I'm going into
But
that's
no,
real
I
metal watch right there.
but no, I mean, I looked it up. Of course, it was the pre you have to wait. The pre-sale was sold out on Target, so I was just kind of curious. But you get 20 Tyranids. Um, and if you're kind of a model collector, you get a Titus model.
Mm-hmm.
May not do you any good if you're not playing Ultramarines and stuff because it's got Ultramarine stuff all over him. But you could craft it however you want to. But it's also a cool model,
Yeah.
and you're talking $40. Now they're going to be push fit, monopose, no biggie. But I would suspect that the multipose kit's going to be 50 to $60, probably.
I would
Um,
think so.
So if you just need another 20, termagants or whatever, it's not a bad value. And then if you were to, eventually it's going to be on sale or something, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure you're at some point you get it for less than $40. But I bought one of these games from way back, but it was like it was the Necron, one of the Necron ones. But it had 5 of the hero Space Marines in it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's supposed to be one from each chapter. So it's 5 different Space Marines, but they're all very unique. And I bought it at Target for like $25. And I only got it because they made a really cool tactical squad because I had a bunch of firstborn stuff. So I was like, and it's kind of a neat looking game. We haven't really played it per se that much, but it's real easy. It's real
Mm-hmm.
quick. It's kind of card based and token based, and it's really pretty cool. But if you don't want to even try one of the new starter kits that are coming out, this would be a pretty decent introduction into it.
Yeah, I think
I
so.
would
I
think.
think that I've got several friends that are more on the outskirts of the Warhammer hobby. They come over to
Hmm.
my house, they look at the models, they look at the paint jobs, they ask me lots of questions, but immediately I could just see in their eyes that's, oh man, that's just so. There's so many rules. It's so deep. I don't have time to get into that. I'm already playing multiple games. I don't have time to mess around with that stuff. And for those, and that's all valid. That's a very
Hmm.
fair point. But for anyone who is a little past that, thinking, I would like to get into Warhammer a little bit. What is that all about? $40 is, and that's the MSRP. So I would
Hmm.
assume that if it ever hits Amazon, it's going to be a little less than that. And there's ways to get discounts on this stuff. But $40 alone is in the impulse buy territory for a board game, especially
Right.
for someone looking to get several miniatures. There's no terrain in here. It's just a flat board with a bunch of bugs, aliens, and
Hmm.
then one single guy. So there's the only thing that I would say is that I think it would have been a little better if the Space Marine side would have had maybe 2 or 3 models,
Yeah, I agree with that.
because just looking at it, if I know nothing about Tyranids at all. If I know nothing about
Hmm.
them, if I don't know anything about Space Marines, I would say, well, the Tyranid player is going to have a really bad time.
That's right.
Because it's just going to be the same models. But then I'm also thinking the Space Marine player is also going to have a really bad time because they've only got one guy to move around the board. So
Yes.
neither of those is true because the game is well balanced. And again, like you said, it is a tie-in to the video game. So if you like the video game, so I
Mm-hmm.
think they're going after video game players that love the Space Marine game, that don't want to jump all the way into Warhammer. This is the foot in the door. So
Yes.
I'm interested to see what this turns into for them and whether or not it's going to be successful. But of course, it's only $40, so I don't think it's going to make or break their year if it doesn't sell that well. But my guess is, even though it's sold out right now on the pre-orders, in a few months they're going to have plenty of stock and at the Target stores. But it looks like here it is only going to be sold online.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I take that back. It's hitting going to store shelves later this month. So,
The the 30th or something
yeah,
like
so
that, I
not
think.
necessarily just sold online, but interesting to see where this goes. They did have two other games. One was Combat Arena, Layer of the Beast, and then an
Yeah.
Underworld starter set. Underworlds, I'm not as big into. I played the digital version online. um,
Uh-huh.
it's cool. I don't have any problems with it, but just not my thing. I don't really care for the hex grid. But the combat arena also has a hex grid, just a bit of a different game. So, Steve, you said you were a little interested in this one, though.
I'm not gonna lie, I don't know much about it, but looking at it, it looks fairly self-explanatory to some degree. But I think I would actually play it. It looks pretty cool, but man, the models is what I'm interested in, because they're basically Blackstone Fortress models, which that game you can't get anymore,
Right.
and most of these are all characters. I love that Ambul creature.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Mm-hmm.
think that would just be a blast to paint. I don't know what else you'd use it for, but the little AI robot guy
Yeah.
looks really cool. But it looks like a neat game. It actually, talking about coming back from vacation. All right, so you get all these guys painted up. This could be something you could take on vacation with you. And if y'all had a rainy day at the beach, and you had kids that were interested in it, or you might actually, get somebody who doesn't really care about 40K but wants to play some little board game. This would be kind of cool. Uh, it
Yeah.
can't be that hard to learn.
Yeah, I agree. I think that the downside of 40K or even Age of Sigmar or even Kill Team Warcry is the amount of stuff that you have to take with you
Mm-hmm.
to play. So if you ever wanted to go, like I did, I'm in a condo in Florida, and obviously I don't have a ton of family members that want to get up a game of 40K or anything
That's
like
right.
that.
That's
But even if I wanted to play with my son or something like that, there's no way I'm lugging around all the terrain and everything, even for something like Kill Team. So if you really needed to get in your fix for Warhammer, this gives you a lot of different options. It's something you could have the models all thrown in a box. You have just a bunch of cards and tokens and things like that, and then you've got a full-fledged game that is still in the Warhammer universe, that is a hex grid base, so it's a little more approachable for people that can't wrap
mm-hmm.
their head around using a tape measure to push models around the board. A hex
Yep.
grid for a lot of people is the preferred method. It's just very easy to understand that I can move 2 spaces, 3 spaces, versus I can move anywhere but it has
Mm-hmm.
to be 6 inches. So for a lot of people, that's just hard to wrap their head around. So really cool board games. I'm all for it. This is another way to get people interested in the hobby.
Absolutely.
Well, that will wrap our show for this episode of Bolters and Booze. Thank you so much for listening. Steve, thank you for your time, attention, and your service. I hope you enjoyed your really boring bourbon. Um,
I certainly did.
my my Boomdakka Stoutwagon is long gone. It was great, I got to say. Highly recommend it. You should make one yourself next time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give that a shot.
Well, thank you so much again for listening. Hope you enjoyed. And I am David the Warboss, and we will see you next time on Dad Hammer. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers.